When England were going into the 2024 Euros, there was so much hype around their national team. They had so many good players, everybody in such great form, that there was talk about another golden generation of English players. I mean, think about it. You had Cole Palmer, who was killing it for Chelsea. He was the Premier League Young Player of the Season that year. Then you had Bukayo Saka, who still to this day has put up his best Arsenal numbers in the 2023-2024 season. He was killing it in the Premier League. He was getting big goals in the Champions League. It looked like we were looking at the next phase of the Premier League. And then, of course, you have Phil Foden, who helped Manchester City win the league, and he did it as the best player. Like, Kevin De Bruyne missed half of the season that year, and Haaland still had some good goal scoring numbers, but it wasn't as impressive as the season before where Manchester City won the treble. So that year felt like the year that Foden really took over and City became his team, because everybody had talked about how eventually Foden was going to carry the torch from Kevin De Bruyne, and it seemed like that time was finally there because he was so good. So you had all three of those guys, Palmer, Saka, Foden, in such incredible form that there were so many debates and discussions about where they would start for the national team, who would get dropped, what formation they would have to play to accommodate all three players.
Well, so who is England's number 10 in your opinion then?
And then on top of all three guys, you had Jude Bellingham, who was killing it in his first year at Real Madrid. I mean, Bellingham was the perfect example of what a £100 million signing is supposed to look like. He came in, scored goals for fun, was the Champions League Young Player of the Season, La Liga Player of the Season, and of course he helped Real Madrid win the double. So you had those three guys killing it in the Premier League. You had Jude Bellingham killing it for Real Madrid, the biggest club in the world at the time. And then on top of those four guys, you had Harry Kane, who had just moved to Bayern Munich, and he was putting up even better numbers than what we saw at Spurs. So England were just stacked. And in this period of time, Declan Rice was also doing really well. I don't know why Rice gets so much hate. I think he's been well worth the amount of money that was paid for him even back then. Now he's been the best player on the best team that the Premier League has had, with Arsenal being first and dominating. But even back then, in his second season at Arsenal, I thought he was doing an excellent job. So many talented players. England were super hyped up, and to be fair, they did make it to the finals. But you fast forward till now as we prepare for the 2026 World Cup, and the hype just isn't there anymore. And it's mainly because the majority of these players are nowhere near as good as they were 2 years ago. Let's start with the big three that I talked about, the three shining stars in the Premier League: Saka, Foden, Palmer. These guys went from being three of the best players in the league to three of the most mid players. Let's start with Foden. Again, in 2024, this guy was the best player in the Premier League. It was his goals, his contributions that allowed City to win the title at a time where everybody thought Arsenal were finally going to break their cherry and win the league. Foden took over. He was excellent in that number 10 position. Now, respectively to Foden, even when he's been at his best for City, he's never replicated that club form for the national team. So even in the 2024 Euros, Southgate used him in a lot of different positions, and it never clicked.
Philip effing Foden. Yeah. I'm not going to swear because I feel like he doesn't deserve the effing. Go on, you can do it.
No, I think it was more like, come on, Philip fucking Foden.
But and maybe he is a systems player. Maybe he's just perfectly suited for Pep's system and only City can get the best out of him. But now, not even Manchester City have seen the best version of Foden. He's like one of the weirdest players I've ever seen because he's so talented. And even in the beginning of the 2025-2026 season, Pep himself said that Phil Foden was back.
This season is back. Yeah.
And yet after the first few months, he just disappeared. When he played, he didn't play well. And now in a lot of big games, Pep simply didn't use him.
I think he's an incredibly talented player. And you think about he was Premier League Player of the Year just a couple of seasons ago. He's now looks like, whether it's lost confidence or lost motivation, I don't think it would be motivation, but...
And keep in mind, a lot of his great performances came this season. Because I know he was really poor in the 2024-2025 season, the season right after the Euros. But in the 2025-2026 season, he started well. He had the goals against Dortmund. He had the goals against Manchester United. He was playing really well. And then just fell off a cliff. And now even Thomas Tuchel has talked about Foden not being guaranteed a spot with the national team. Then you get to Cole Palmer. The guy looked like the next big thing in the Prem. He was killing it for Chelsea. And remember, when he was initially signed by Chelsea, everybody thought that City had scammed them.
Chelsea have just got to stop buying players, and players have got to stop signing for Chelsea.
They were saying Premier League tax, English tax. Look how much City got for a player that was on their bench. It was typical Manchester City. You know, nobody actually watched them play because Palmer, even though he wasn't necessarily starting every single game, had some great moments for them even in that season before he joined Chelsea. In the beginning of his Chelsea career, he was actually on the bench, and then eventually as he started playing more and more under Mauricio Pochettino, he just transformed into an absolute star. And even the beginning of the next season, he still looked amazing. I'm never gonna forget that game where he was absolutely dunking on Brighton. I had never seen an individual performance like that since like Messi. Every time he touched the ball, I felt like he was gonna score. I legit thought he might score like 6-7 goals in that first half. But from that point on, Palmer's career has been up and down. Part of it is of course the groin injury. You're seeing a lot of young footballers deal with it. Yamal has the same issue, so does Mastantuono at Real Madrid. So I think that disrupted his form because towards the back end of the 2024-2025 season, he wasn't good.
Palmer is no goal in 17 games in all competitions. Any signs today that his confidence is getting back?
Not really.
But then at the Club World Cup, he was amazing. And then the 2025-2026 season happened, and the same thing. This guy looks a shadow of the guy that we saw in the 2023-2024 season. I mean, you guys remember that performance he put on against Manchester United? How about the performance he put on against his former club, Manchester City? He was just a beast that season. Now you watch him play, it's not the same guy. He had moments under Maresca, but again, a very up and down season. I still think Tuchel is going to take him because I actually think he was one of the three that was completely disrespected by Southgate. He was in incredible form. He showed really good performances in the rare times that Southgate brought him off the bench for England. I mean, he was the one that scored in the final, and he just wasn't utilized. Maybe Tuchel will find a role for him, but unfortunately for Palmer, he's not the same guy that we saw 2 years ago. Now we get to Bukayo Saka. Now, Saka pretty much had that right wing spot locked down completely, even when Palmer was playing amazing, even when Foden was doing really well. Part of it, of course, is that Palmer was seen more as like a number 10. Same thing with Phil Foden. Obviously, you can't fit them all in, but Saka for England at that right wing spot had been fantastic, so there was really no need for a replacement. I'm not talking about just that season, I'm talking about in general. He'd always performed for England. But now going into this World Cup, Saka has been in the worst form of his career. I think when you look at the past few seasons at Arsenal, even when they hadn't won anything, Saka had always been a consistent figure in that team, making things happen, scoring goals. But now, when Arsenal are having their best ever season, Saka is like the 6th or 7th best player on the team. Like, he wouldn't be in the team of the season, he wouldn't win any individual awards. He hasn't even been a top 3 player.
I thought 2 years ago, Saka and Odegaard were looking like what I was thinking, oh God, these are the real deal. These are like, this is going to be like Salah and De Bruyne type of, like, they're nearly there, and they just never sort of, the team are probably going to win the league, but I think if Arsenal win the league this season, I don't think one of the attacking players will go, I've had an amazing season, I've been brilliant this season.
Which is very weird because he was seen as the face of Arsenal Football Club. Even last year, before his injury, he was putting up some great numbers, really helping the Gunners. Now though, this is another player that going into the 2026 World Cup, there's no hype around him. Whether it's injuries catching up to him, whether it's the fact that Arteta completely used him like a sponge for the last 5-6 years, nobody knows. But it's another English player who was so hyped going into the Euros, but there's no hype around him now going into the World Cup. Now we go overseas to Jude Bellingham. So Bellingham hasn't been the same player that we saw in 2024 either. He ended up sneaking his way into the Team of the Year voted by the players, but anybody that's watched Real Madrid will know he hasn't been great. To be fair to Bellingham, I think he set the standards a little bit too high in that first season of his. He had never been a high-scoring midfielder. He was a fantastic box-to-box guy at Borussia Dortmund. But in that first season at Real Madrid, he came in. They didn't have a striker because Benzema had left and they only signed Joselu. He played as a false 9/center attacking midfielder in the 4-4-2 diamond under Ancelotti, and it was just perfect for him. Him and Vinny were a crazy duo. He was able to box crash, but also track back. He basically had the freedom to go wherever he wanted. So that's why he was able to get so many goals, because there was nobody ahead of him. But then the next season, Mbappe comes in. Bellingham gets pushed back to central midfield, so his individual stats come down. Now, he wasn't playing bad, but of course, he's going to get less goals when Mbappe's in the team, because now Mbappe's going to get the goals. He's the striker. His role completely changed. He was no longer the focal point of a diamond attack playing off of Vinny. He was playing in the center of the park, doing the dirty work, doing double the work, but getting half the recognition. So again, it's not like he got bad. It's just the 2024 season, he put up such a high bar that unless he scored the same amount of goals and Real Madrid won every single trophy, he was never going to be able to replicate it. And then in the 2025-2026 season, he was dealing with injuries. Now, Bellingham, I still believe is a very good player, but I do think he's completely disrespected by the English. Now, I'm not a Bellingham supporter by any means. I think as a person, he's a bit of a prick. By that, I mean he's one of those guys that has great PR, acts like a super nice guy, but on the pitch, he's always talking smack, always being a front runner, and at times, especially if his team is losing, he'll play very dirty. He's not afraid to destroy the guy on the pitch. But again, if he was playing for a team that I supported, I wouldn't care about that stuff, because he is a world-class player. And compared to Foden and Palmer and Saka, I don't actually think he's gotten worse. I think his role has just shifted, and Real Madrid as a team haven't been good in the past few seasons since Mbappe joined. But Bellingham for England is still a world-class player. I mean, I couldn't believe the amount of people that were trying to to downplay his Euro 2024 campaign. The guy scored a bicycle kick to keep England's dreams alive, and I saw him get nothing but hate, or at least all the talk was about his celebration rather than the goal. Yes, he's an arrogant footballer. He plays with footballing arrogance, but there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you're English. But a lot of people don't like this guy. Thomas Tuchel came in and said that he wasn't guaranteed a start. Now, I agree that Morgan Rogers has been very good for Aston Villa and he is a good player, but Bellingham for any other nation is a locked-in starter. The way they talk about this guy like he's a glorified role player is kind of insane to me. He's very good and his drop-off hasn't been as big as some of the other English players that I was talking about. Him in that number 10 role in front of Declan Rice is a huge asset to the national team. And of course, don't forget that Harry Kane will be right in front of him. But yeah, the entire discourse around Bellingham, it's interesting to me. So many people don't like him, so many people speak negatively about him when he's one of the few actual world-class players that England have. And then you have his boyfriend Trent, who might not even make it to the World Cup. It's actually insane to me. A big list of players and he won't be there, or most likely won't be there. And keep in mind, Reece James has been dealing with injuries and Thomas Tuchel decided to bring on Jed Spence. Like, I understand all the criticism around Trent not being able to defend or whatever, but surely his profile as a fullback would be needed in any team. And I know he had been dealing with injuries in Real Madrid as well, but ever since he came back, he actually really elevated that team. Him coming back to right back is one of the reasons that Valverde was having the best performances of his career. Yes, he's not defensively as good as a Reece James, but again, in a 35-man team list, with Reece James dealing with injuries, surely Trent would have been a locked-in selection. But unfortunately, Thomas Tuchel didn't feel that way. Lastly, I want to talk about Harry Kane, one of the few English players who did not have a drop-off at all from 2024. In fact, he's actually gotten better every single season since, playing for Bayern, adjusting to life in Germany, and as the team around him has gotten better, his numbers have gotten better. Every single year, he's basically been a Ballon d'Or candidate because his numbers are just insane. The quality of goals he's scoring, the playmaking he's showing on top of the goal scoring. The world's best number 9 in my opinion. Even Thomas Tuchel saw it in training. So he's one of the rare players who there's as much hype around him, if not more, than 2 years ago. And then lastly, the same thing goes for Declan Rice. This guy gets a lot of hate, and partly because Arsenal fans do overrate him, but he's a very good player. Excellent at winning the ball, covering ground, he can get you goals. He's been phenomenal ever since joining Arsenal, yet I still see him get a lot of hate. Again, one of the few players that the hype around him has actually increased since the last major tournament, because he has gotten better and better for Arsenal. Like I said, the face of Arsenal Football Club went from Bukayo Saka to Declan Rice now, because if the Gunners end up winning the Premier League, Declan Rice will probably win the Player of the Year because he was the best player on the best team. He's done really well for them, and I think he'll do well for the England national team too. There is a lot of talent in this English squad, so naturally there is still some hype around them. Many people feel that they can go far, but the expectations around them I don't think are as high as they were 2 years ago, even with Thomas Tuchel coming in instead of Gareth Southgate, because under Tuchel, England actually lost for the first time in friendlies to an African nation and an Asian nation. Now, they were just friendlies, so maybe we don't have to read too much into it, but I do think the hype around this new golden generation of English players just isn't there anymore. There was way more discussion and talk about them going into the 2024 Euros than the 2026 World Cup. But maybe this will come to England's advantage. Historically, these guys have always done better when there's less pressure on them. They always do the best when everybody's counting them out. Now, they're not counting them out now because, again, some of the best players in the world are currently English, but there's less discussions about how to fit in Foden, Palmer, and Saka. In fact, Thomas Tuchel has even moved away from picking players just purely based on name and hype. Will this finally lead to England winning a major tournament? Only time will tell. Now, one of England's most important players will be Harry Kane. To see just how good he has been at Bayern, you have to watch this video right here.